The other day, I was preparing to do my schoolwork, pouring myself a nice glass of sugar-free silver ice Rockstar, and ready to start my day at 1:45 p.m. when I was reminded, once again, of the existence of KDA in my homepage on YouTube because of a leak of the More routine from Just Dance 2023. It's an absolutely insane sentence, but it is true. This was followed up by a video reviewing Arcane that was recommended to me, and a few videos down, a video of True Damage's music video for Giants. And it got me thinking, I don't even play League. I've dabbled occasionally, but mostly just like if I've had a couple drinks with friends who enjoy it and who assure me that they aren't going to judge me for how I play. My approach to League is that I'll get drunk, impulsively spend some money to unlock the himbos, the twinks, and the pop stars, and then play for maybe 2 hours a year. It is, in my opinion, the best way to enjoy League of Legends as a video game. However, League of Legends isn't just a video game, and I very much so go off on the non-gaming side of things, particularly their music. KDA has consistently been one of my most listened artists for the last couple of years. I own the Secret Lab KDA chair. Oh, I want to make it clear, I was buying one anyways, and the color scheme just fit with my office, so it wasn't like that extreme. And I honestly would probably buy one of the light sticks if I could afford it. I paid real money for the all-out KDA skins for Evelynn and Seraphine, and I was convinced to buy Just Dance as like a workout game solely because they added Drum Go Dumb a couple years back. Some of the artists involved in KDA were artists that I was already familiar with, and it was actually Kim Petras' feature on Villain that convinced me to listen. And like a lot of people, KDA was a bit of a gateway group for K-pop as a whole, particularly G-Idol, since two of their members are part of the group. I haven't watched Arcane yet, although I know it's only a matter of time. I follow their competitive scene kind of in the same way that I follow the NFL's competitive scene, namely I'm looking to see if a queer icon is going to have a legendary halftime performance in their championships, and I spend a decent amount of time falling down wiki holes exploring the lore because it is fascinating and intricate and weird. The reason I'm talking about this though is because League of Legends is an excellent example, maybe the single best example in video games as an industry, of turning a franchise into a franchise. League of Legends does not, as far as I'm aware, have a story mode in-game. You get short blurbs about each champion and their character bios, their skins can give you some context what's going on, there's in-game interactions, whatever, but a lot of it is delivered pretty similarly to Overwatch. It's external media. The difference is that Overwatch's external media is extremely sparse. There is no TV show despite the demand being huge at the time of Overwatch's 2016 launch when shorts were being pretty frequently released, and that hype resurfaces every time a new one drops. The fans of Overwatch have been consistently begging for lore and expanded universe materials, and in an era of massive multimedia cinematic universes like Marvel, it really would have been the perfect game to step into that role. Unlike League, Overwatch's cast is a lot smaller and a lot more manageable, especially when it was at launch, and the dynamic was originally a lot more straightforward in terms of there being clear factions and a distinct, easily explainable conflict. You've got Overwatch, you've got Talon, you've got Null Sector, and then you have kind of branching spiderwebs out from each org. Overwatch has released, according to the Overwatch wiki, 23 comics and 12 animated shorts since the game's launch, most of which were concentrated around the 2016 release of the first game or around the releases of heroes and maps over the years, which meant that they mostly stopped altogether during the content drought of the last couple of years. There are characters who've been in the game since launch who have gotten functionally no real lore. Zenyatta appeared in a short story for Symmetra and has made cameos as a prop for Genji, but that's pretty much it for him. And from a business perspective, this is just weird when you think about it. Like, look at Arcane, sure, but also look at Edge Runners, or even like Danganronpa 3. Tie-in shows that expand the universe of a video game can be very successful. In the case of Arcane and Danganronpa, they expanded on the lives of mostly well-known characters who otherwise existed in a pretty small bubble within their games. In the case of Edge Runners, it was just set in the same universe. Fans of League enjoyed watching Jinx develop as a character.
That's me!
Fans of Danganronpa got to see how Junko Enoshima set up her master plan.
What are you doing? Duh! I'm doing the narration!
And fans of Cyberpunk were able to explore a different side of Night City through the perspective of a character who, in-game, probably would have been nothing more than a mini-boss. People don't really remember how big Overwatch was in 2016, particularly in terms of how much people loved the characters. Sometimes in a wholesome way, sometimes less so. An Overwatch TV show could have gone the route of Arcane and explored the history of characters like Sombra, or Tracer, or Widowmaker, or Diva, or any number of other characters with these rich, unexplored backstories. It could have gone the route of Danganronpa 3, at least the Despair arc, and explored the months leading up to the fall of Overwatch as an organization.
You may think you're a above petty human desires, but you need despair. When it's calling the shots, all bets are off. You don't want to be bored out of your skull for the rest of forever, do ya?
It could have gone the route of edge runners and followed some random character, maybe even a future hero, trying to navigate the Omnic Crisis, culminating in the creation of Overwatch and exploring how the Omnic Crisis led to the present-day world in-game.
Los, come.
Hey!
Even if it was just a single season, I can guarantee you, it would have been a success. Overwatch's animated shorts and trailers have hundreds of millions of views between them, and even the character origin stories that were presented as more stylized 1 to 3 minute summaries of character backstories are all up in the millions of views each. Hell, even if it wasn't very good, it still would have made bank. Like, I'm an unapologetic Danganronpa stan. I love that media. I love those games. They are so much fun to me. I'll still admit Danganronpa 3 was definitely a flawed series in a lot of ways, but I still loved it. It was fun. I liked this series. I liked the concept. I liked the characters. And the fact that I loved it is proof of how much a fan can overlook flaws if it builds out a universe that they love. Not to get into it, but see also Marvel stans. And look, I totally get it might seem weird for Overwatch to make music, but it is also weird for Riot to do it in concept. League of Legends is a video game. It is not a music game. Why are they producing pop music? And moreover, why is it really good pop music? KDA shouldn't exist, and yet they are out there making bops, and they are pretty huge despite only releasing 1 song in 2018 and 5 more in 2020. On Spotify, KDA has more than 3 million monthly listeners as of November 2022. On YouTube, the music video for Popstars has 533 million views, with Moore's video racking up 171 million, Villain's concept video getting 72, the Baddest lyric video getting 61, the live performance of Popstars having 57, the I'll Show You music video having 22, and the Drumco Dumb dance video having 15 million. For some context, the most watched Overwatch animated short is Dragons at 41 million views, followed by Infiltration at 24, Honor and Glory at 23, The Last Bastion at 22, 0 Hour and Hero at 19 million each, and Reunion at 17 million. If you add up the views on every single video on the Play Overwatch YouTube channel, not including their live streams, you would still have fewer views than just the Popstars music video. And it's not like Overwatch didn't have the opportunity to do this. Like, they have a cast of characters they could have dressed up in a pop group. League took 4 characters with insane backstories and just created an alternate universe where they were all pop divas, and it worked. It would have required a real investment of resources, but Blizzard absolutely could have done the same thing. It has really iconic heroes with incredible designs that could have been reworked into some incredible musical concepts in the universe. I mean, Lucio is right fucking there! They made Synesthesia Auditiva, but that was mostly just a gimmick, and not a real attempt, and was promptly forgotten about by everyone. And while I was thinking about this, the thing that I kept coming back to is that I really just wish I knew the why behind all of this. My best guess is that it was originally the intention to expand like this, but they just let the story get away from them and they didn't know how to reel it back. I've been talking about it for years, but specifically with Sombra's introduction, they took a pretty straightforward story of good guys and bad guys and tried to turn it into this complex web of conspiracies that the writers were not prepared enough, or apparently frankly talented enough, to follow up on.
I'll find out who really runs the world. I'll find their weaknesses and how to exploit them. And when I do, I'll be the one pulling the strings. Who is Sombra? You'll never know. Adios.
So they just didn't. The writers bit off far more than they could chew because they thought it sounded cool and exciting and interesting, and it broke their story. And it was really that first major instance of the timeline becoming deeply muddled. A lot of external media pieces were shifted or even cancelled to accommodate this story retcon. There's a reason why most of the stories that have progressed over Overwatch's lifespan have been hyper-individual stories that don't really move the overall narrative forward. The story became unmanageable, and in the hands of a better team, this might have actually been a blessing in disguise. It could have been an opportunity to create these kinds of alternate universe skin collections or external media properties that could help them basically stall for time while they tried to figure out the real story. Instead, they kind of just sat on their hands. And the PvE is still being delayed, even though that was ostensibly the whole reason for Overwatch 2 to exist. Like, it feels like they don't know what they're doing with any of it. And am I saying that Blizzard needs to make a pop group? No, they don't need to. They also don't need to make a TV show or a movie or a compelling story, as evidenced by the fact that this game's entire narrative is currently being propped up by good character design and sassy dialogue. But it's also evident that they spent half a decade fumbling potentially the biggest bag of any new video game franchise from the 2010s. People were starving for content, and they got nothing. The release of new pre-game interactions between the characters in Overwatch 2 is probably the single biggest expansion of the narrative and lore of Overwatch since its launch, and that's kind of sad. People were practically begging for opportunities to give Blizzard money and attention back in 2016 for Overwatch, and Blizzard didn't do anything with it. Riot used League of Legends to set a bar for multimedia expansion that very few video game companies could have ever hoped to reach, just in terms of the resources required, but if anyone could have, it was Blizzard. The hype surrounding Overwatch and the resources of that company, especially after the merger with Activision, would have been enough to start throwing their hat into the ring of multimedia expansion. Arcane was an exploration of a popular character that gave her depth and fleshed out the massive universe that League of Legends has built around its characters as it incorporates more and more outlandish concepts, and it did so pretty successfully. Edgerunners was an anime prequel to a game that had one of the most disappointing and disastrous launches of all time and has still not released its first major DLC pack almost 2 full years after its launch, and it still blew up. Danganronpa 3 as a show fully abandoned the game's concept of a Monokuma-led killing game between teenagers in favor of splitting its attention 50-50 between being a prequel for Danganronpa 1 that connected the dots on a ton of events that had been alluded to, and being a sequel to Danganronpa 2 that involved a killing game between adults with prohibited activities and without class trials. And across both arcs, the concept of anime can save the world is unironically one of the major themes of the show, and it was still received pretty well, all things considered. KDA's All Out album charted at number 65 in Canada, and Popstars has been certified platinum in the US, with its video being around the 35th most viewed K-pop music video of all time on YouTube. That's insane! In all of this, what has Blizzard done with one of the most successful new IPs in video games over the last decade? Popularized some exploitative monetization practices, developed a reputation as having one of the dumbest communities on TikTok and gaming, renamed a character because his namesake was one of many pieces of shit let go for contributing to a hostile, misogynistic work culture at Blizzard. It doesn't exactly speak to Blizzard's competence at managing its IPs, and it's frustrating to watch the potential of this franchise be wasted because nobody at Blizzard seems capable of pulling their heads out of their asses for long enough to develop it. The demand for more Overwatch content has been massive over the years, as evidenced by the fact that their shorts are still getting views on YouTube, and even though enthusiasm has faded over time as it's become clear that Blizzard doesn't care enough to build this universe out, it is still high enough that they could do something with it if they wanted. Anyways, thank you for listening to me rant about my frustrations about not having an Overwatch K-pop group or anime or whatever this video was really about. I'm not entirely certain. Sometimes I try and plan out a video in advance a bit more, but this was kind of a spontaneous thing. Again, a lot of caffeine. But either way, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe for more, all that good stuff. All my links are in the description, and I stream on Twitch on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 7 to 10 p.m. Mountain Time if you'd like to stop by and say hey. Until then, I'll see you around.